For more on this deadly ambush, let's bring in retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, geopolitical strategist, battalion commander, and a Black Hawk helicopter pilot as well. Lieutenant Colonel Gaub, a lot of Americans, I think, are a little surprised to learn that we still have troops in Syria. Lucas says there are about 900 of them. Just give us big picture. What are they doing there?
Hey, John. Yeah. Yes, many Americans will be surprised that we're still in Syria, among many other countries where, the debate needs to be had of whether or not we really should be there. But why are they in Syria? Well, ultimately, yes, part of that is working with the Kurdish allies of ours. But the bigger picture there is that we're trying to make sure that this Islamic caliphate doesn't actually rise out of the ashes of what many nations have dealt with over the years in the Middle East. That's ultimately ISIS's goal, and as well as many organizations that are ideologically affiliated or aligned with them. So that's the stated goal of why we're there. It falls under the global war on terror that is ongoing still. So I think that debate needs to be had of whether or not they really need to be there still.
One of the questions, though, is can we trust the Syrian forces that we are working with? I want to play something from the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who says there are still some concerns there. Listen.
Some of the elements that helped the current government come to power and drive Assad out are foreign fighters. Some of them that helped them are people that have some pretty radical views, and they're not all entirely under the control of the government in Damascus.
Which raises the question. I mean, there will be a post-mortem to figure out who this gunman was who was killed in this attack on American forces. But we have to vet the people who are allowed to get close to U.S. forces.
We do, and unfortunately, it's never a perfect science, because in Afghanistan, we called this green on blue incidents, where Afghan fighters would do the same thing. And so what Syria has become under essentially what is an ISIS-led government, he's just changed what clothing he wears. They've turned into a mini version of Afghanistan again. So we really have to vet them closely. We really have to figure out a way if we can or cannot trust folks, because they're going to get closer to our people for a lot of different reasons. Unfortunately, it is hard to trust people in that region for this exact reason.
About a month ago, Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Sharaa, spoke with our Jillian Turner about the fight against ISIS just after he visited the White House, which also had a lot of people surprised. Listen to this.
We participated in so many battles against Daesh, against ISIS for 10 years, and we have suffered a lot during these battles, and I have lost much of my forces in the battles against ISIS. The reasons for the presence of the United States militarily in Syria needs to be with the coordination with the Syrian government right now. So we need to discuss these matters, and we need to talk about and get into an agreement about ISIS.
So it sounds like he is as committed to wiping out ISIS as the United States is. Would you agree, Colonel?
I don't trust him a bit. In fact, ISIS is his background in the first place. So I would watch him like a hawk, and I would assume that somehow he's actually talking to ISIS still anyways. I don't know that for a fact, but just as many years as I have lived in the Middle East and the things I've seen, I do not believe him at all to be on the side of the U.S., and I don't believe that he's really truly fighting ISIS the way he says he is. And I think our greater debate needs to be, do American forces, the limited number that are there, need to remain in the middle of Syria and this exposed?
Okay, but what happens if ISIS somehow reconstitutes after it was essentially, not eliminated, but it was brutalized during the first Trump administration?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a healthy debate to have. We can't live in fear of things like ISIS reconstituting, and because that causes us to stay in countries for decades. It's the same reason largely why we're still sitting in South Korea. So, I think the debate needs to be had. It needs to be with the American people of whether or not we want our forces sitting in the Middle East, and whether or not the reconstituting of ISIS is a real threat, or if it's something else. And if there is a strategy or a strategic end state for the United States that is worth investing in assuming this kind of risk, that decision has not been made clearly, and it has not involved enough of the American people to say, yes, we know this is truly worth doing.
I want to put up a map of the bases that currently exist, U.S. bases that currently exist in the Middle East, from the Sinai Peninsula all the way to the east and the Strait of Hormuz almost, and up north on the Turkish border, and then down into Saudi Arabia, obviously. We've got bases all over the place and a lot of troops in harm's way. It sounds like you would be advocating perhaps eliminating some of those bases and bringing those troops home.
Yeah, I would advocate for eliminating a lot of it if you cannot come up with a true strategic reason for Americans to be there and assuming the risk by their presence. I think that's one of the greatest problems right now in America is we're spread so thin globally. What we haven't done is actually truly assess whether we're actually needed in many of these places the way we may think we're needed. There's a point at which you just get spread too far, and there's too much risk that it's just simply not worth it.
Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, retired. We appreciate your perspective today. Thank you.